Why consoles are going extinct. Are they actually going extinct? Let's see what this person has to say. All right, so this video today that I'm reacting to, it's called Why Consoles Are Going Extinct. It is from Going Indie. Let's hear it.
Since the creation of video games, no piece of hardware has been more important than the console. It brought video games to our homes in the 80s.
Will you be the one to experience the Nintendo Entertainment System?
It popularized them in the 90s.
16-bit Super Nintendo.
And transformed home entertainment in the 2000s. For decades, consoles have pushed the world of gaming and technology into the future.
So, consoles are amazing. I love my consoles. I do wonder, now that technology and internet speeds and everything have caught up, are they still going to be as popular? I'm really curious what's going to happen
with many
these.
Consoles being combined to create supercomputers for governments or banned from certain countries because of the console's advanced technology.
Was that true? Did the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 thing turn out to actually be true?
PlayStation 2 became the repeated target of war-related media coverage.
Every console generation seemed to propel us forward, bringing something new, powerful, or innovative. But in the past 10 years, consoles have fallen behind, with many people jumping ship to PCs and phones. What was once a console-dominant...
I agree with that. I do think the phone market, everybody's sleeping on it. Everybody writes it off. The phone market is growing very, very fast. And I think we've hit a point where, like, graphically, we don't really need more powerful consoles. That's not what moves the needle. Look at how well the Switch is done. I don't think the Switch's success is due to its graphical power. I don't think anybody would argue that. But it's done better than any other platform.
Industry has now become a place where consoles sit in third place, slowly losing market share year after year.
Losing market share. Investing in video game stocks may be bad in the long term,
with many investors telling new game makers to avoid consoles.
We sit in these seats as venture capitalists, and I think if a founder came to us and said they were going to try and start a game and ship it on console, we would be like, what? Why?
But back in the old days, it wasn't PC versus console versus phone. It was console versus console.
Yep.
These console wars brought us the greatest gaming hardware generation after generation. But the constant battle for dominance has driven the very thing we've been fighting over to its grave. And Microsoft is behind it.
So here's the thing. I don't know about the Microsoft behind it thing, but the problem is you can build PCs for less and less now. The console isn't really necessary. You can stream stuff to your television. Everybody's getting in on the mobile market right now. Like, the mobile market is exploding. And if you're just thinking about console units, it hasn't been growing. It's largely stagnant. The PlayStation 4 sold fewer units than the PlayStation 3 in its lifetime. Granted, it could still get there, but I mean, that should tell you a little bit about where things are at. The Switch is like a crazy use case.
Console wars.
The console wars.
Like console wars and console wars.
Oh, am I in this?
Reached out. I actually reached out to Nord myself. As someone who travels for work, I sit in multiple airports every month. And usually my internet service in there is garbage. So
he has
instead,
a little blue
I
bar
spend
for the
hours
ad
to work
read.
on
I
very
like that.
sketchy, don't have to
I
worry
do
about
like
my
Nord.
data or passwords
I wish they
being
would sponsor me.
compromised. I just flip a switch, and long before I was around, the first console war began. A war waged by Atari and Intellivision. Although
God.
The Atari was the first and is the most well-known, the Intellivision had better graphics and sounds.
And found Intellivision played much more like real baseball.
Looks more like he should be comparing whiskeys, not game consoles, but this was the beginning of the console wars, and the smear commercials by Mattel were actually working. In the 80s, the Intellivision had a real chance at competing with Atari, and as a result of the competition, the console market was on the rise. Sadly though, as home gaming was just getting a foothold, crisis struck. And the video game market crashed in 1983.
Crashed big
the gaming
time.
market was saturated with low-quality games, and people were more interested in purchasing personal computers.
Do you think another crash is coming? It was saturated with low quality games. I think the modern equivalent will be saturated with games that maybe don't respect your time. Is it too loud or too low? The volume.
Why buy $1,000? And people were more interested in purchasing personal computers.
So the question is another crash coming? And I think it is. And I think the reason it's coming is because games are way too expensive to make and the profit margins are razor thin. So all of these practices, like the fact that Suicide Squad is a looter shooter as opposed to a single player experience, are creeping up to offset those costs, which means that players, us, are getting, I don't know, our time less and less respected. So I think another crash is coming. The bubble is going to burst.
Traded with low quality games, and people were more interested in purchasing personal computers. Why buy $1,000 console to play this? You could play something just as bad on a PC. Personal computers were more of a versatile option with the ability to play games and work. A problem we will see pop up years later. But with the fall of the console, home video game revenues went from $3.2 billion in 1983 to $100 million in 1985, a 97% drop. So the first console war was won by Atari, but in reality, it was more like mutually assured destruction.
Well, the old crash was due to games being bad. The modern crash is partially because of that. They're just bad in a different way. They're bad because they don't respect your time. They're bad because they're stringing you along on these chases. And people are waking up. They're just like, I don't want to play these games anymore. I want a break.
Games were looking more like a fad, filling up landfills and lost to obscurity like the original console makers. But then a console rose from the ashes. From a playing card company we all know today, Nintendo. Nintendo really was the savior of gaming.
Yeah.
Because when they
Nintendo
released the NES
amazing.
in 1985, it completely shifted people's perception of video games. So many games produced at this time were expensive garbage, and Nintendo didn't want another ET fiasco. Every Nintendo title had to be quality, and when the NES released, it blew people away.
Recently,
And that's been Sony's model for so long, right? Like, make really, really good games. And unfortunately, to see them depart from that, it has me really, really worried. The whole
gameplay, the stories,
thing.
the characters, practically every prominent Nintendo IP came from this generation, and it was actually affordable. The NES was gold. Every kid was pleading to get this thing for Christmas. Nintendo had a complete monopoly of home gaming, and with only a $300 price tag, people were happy to buy.
Shut up and take my money!
Other companies saw this success and wanted in. One company in particular stepped into the ring against the console king, and they did it in style.
What Nintendo don't.
So with the release of Sega Genesis in 1989 and the media campaign,
I loved my Genesis.
The second console war began. These two Japanese companies fought for dominance, each fighting over specs, gameplay, and IP, with Sega creating Sonic to rival the Mustache Plumber. Commercials, advertisements, bits, these companies fought incessantly, and it seemed like the console industry would be dominated by Sega and Nintendo forever, until a third Japanese company entered the arena. When Sony joined the brawl, the company jumped to first place immediately. The PlayStation was incredible. It was more powerful than...
I had no idea Sony was that popular. Around this time, Destin was broke. I was like not playing video games. My neighbors had a Dreamcast at that time and they had the PlayStation, but like I was like not in because I couldn't afford to be.
Anything out there, and it used CD-ROMs, not cartridges, for its games. On top of great hardware, they had a top-notch cast of characters, ranging from Cloud to Crash Bandicoot.
Your worst nightmare has arrived.
Sony was geared to win the next console war, and this Mexican standoff caused Sega to fall behind, leaving the console industry to never return.
Is that number 2?
Through most of the 80s and 90s, the Japanese dominated the console industry. From Nintendo to Sega to Sony, no one else dared to compete or they died trying.
I have
then
both
Microsoft
of those.
and Bill Gates did the unthinkable. They not only entered the console market, but they entered it with this.
What the hell is that?
Although the original Xbox looked like a green monstrosity when compared to the PS2, the green box was powerful, way more powerful than the PS2 or GameCube. But it was new and it didn't have that many games.
To start, I don't like this revisionist history that the Xbox was like this terrible system or something like that. The original Xbox had a lot of cool stuff going for it. It had Xbox Live, which was introduced a few years after launch. It eventually got some really, really cool exclusives like Splinter Cell. Halo put it on the map. Halo 2. And games like Rainbow Six 3, because of Xbox Live, were like the place to play those titles. So I find it very strange, and I think he's going to get to it. But we watched that other video not that long ago where they're like, it didn't have anything. I'm like, it had a ton of stuff. The original Xbox was amazing.
So it sold only 24 million copies, which sounds pretty good until you compare it with the PlayStation 2. But the Xbox did good enough for Microsoft to greenlight the next one. And thank goodness they did. Because the next console generation would be the biggest fight in console history.
This is your new Xbox 360.
We've got one. Now on to PlayStation 3.
I owned every one of these consoles, and each one had something I couldn't resist. The technology in the PS3 was amazing.
Yeah.
Blu-ray DVD players at the time were close to $1,000, and you got one built in the PS3 for only $600. The Xbox 360 had the best game lineup and community. That original interface was just oozing fun and friends. And then there was the Wii. This little white box had Wii Sports, Brawl, and Super Mario Galaxy.
Yeah.
Those games were awesome. I don't remember playing much else since most Wii games were kind of gimmicky, but it was still tons of fun and the commercials were great.
We would like to play.
Yeah.
This generation was
really fun.
fiery hot. Every console had something unique about it and the sales were neck and neck. This generation ended up being incredibly important.
This generation was just so great. And this video is so good. I'm just finding myself watching it instead of reacting to it. But go check out the video if you don't want to hear my commentary. This was like the generation. I actually saved up Mountain Dew bottle caps so I could enter the Mountain Dew competition, and that's how I got my 360. I had to straight up buy my PlayStation 3, and it was the most expensive console at the time, but I wanted that 60 gig unit. The 60 gig unit was the best one that you could get because of its backwards compatibility and what I could do, and I still have that unit today. And the Wii, well, a lot of people talk about how it ended up being gimmicky and everything like that. It sold like crazy. You could not get a Wii for like years. And some of those games on the Wii, like the ones he mentioned, were phenomenal. They ended up being really, really good, but they got locked into that motion control stuff.
Because this was the last real battle of the console war, where consoles duked it out, each with their own personality and value. When consoles were at their peak. But the next console generation would be quite different. 7 years after the 7th gen consoles were released, it was finally time to see what was coming next. And Sony announced the PS4.
PlayStation.
The PS4 looked like a great console, with all sorts of games and community-driven features. Not to mention, you could use it as a media player. People were excited. People were also excited, though, to see the new Xbox. The 360 had been amazing, aside from the Red Ring of Death.
How did Don Matrick mess things up so bad? He literally nearly killed the gaming division of Xbox. It was so bad. I've been very critical of the original Xbox One era. I just can't believe.
And players couldn't imagine what the Xbox announcement had in store.
Go to Internet Explorer, Skype. When you're exercising, it can read your heartbeat.
The announcement was bad.
It was really bad.
Will that be debit or credit?
It was super, super bad. To the point that Phil Spencer and Satya Nadella had a really long conversation about Don not coming back. Whoop.
It can read your heartbeat.
The announcement was bad. People weren't sure if this was a console
People
or some
booed.
kind of device to watch movies and Skype your friends.
I'm looking forward to you showing off the great work we're doing with our partners at ESPN.
I felt like Microsoft talked about everything but normal games. They were so focused on being the future of family room technology, they forgot why people buy consoles in the first place.
The whole conference was memed with the TV. It was done. And then Matrix, being an idiot, he like dunked on the people who didn't like the announcement.
Games.
Fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity.
It's
called Xbox 360.
Like, are you serious? Were you ever PR trained?
Even when they did talk about video games, it was controversial because it was uncertain if you could play your titles offline or even share them with your friends. Sony, of course, saw all of this chaos and had a little fun with the controversy.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Here you go.
Thanks.
Sadly, the Xbox One flopped on release.
That video, it's perfect. Like the marketing of that, how to share a game, it's perfect.
And it wasn't the only one. A few months earlier, Nintendo released this horrendous thing. A console that allowed you to play games on a tablet, but you couldn't really travel with it. So it was like this console wannabe handheld thing. I didn't get it.
Does it sound like the modern PlayStation handheld. It does to me, which is bizarre.
And neither did most people. It failed hard. This was the first time Nintendo wasn't profitable, and the company was struggling. Everything but the PlayStation was crashing and burning. Xbox lost its identity as a gaming console, and Nintendo made a console that was trying to be a handheld. By just making a normal console, Sony immediately won the battle. But the divide just got even bigger, thanks to exclusives. The amount of exclusive games PlayStation had was leaps and bounds better. Want to play Halo?
The PlayStation 4 was so good compared to the Xbox One. The Xbox One era was bad. Xbox has admitted it's bad. Everybody knows it's bad. I am curious how he gets to everything's Xbox's fault, though.
Halo 4? Buy an Xbox One or just play it on the Xbox 360. Whatever, who cares? Want to play any of these games? Yeah, buy a PlayStation 4. So Sony won the battle. But unlike any other console fight, this one would have long-lasting consequences. Such an impact that the Wii U would be Nintendo's last console.
Huh?
What about the Switch?
Some people are really stupid.
The Switch isn't a console. It may sound crazy, but hear me out.
Yeah, it sounds kind of crazy. I'll hear you out, but it's a console.
Let's look at the creation of the Wii U, and I think it will explain why the Switch isn't what we normally define as a home console. Since the N64, Nintendo had been in second place to the PlayStation, losing over and over. So Nintendo branched out with the Wii, no longer competing on specs, but instead taking a blue ocean approach with a focus on unique gaming experiences. It worked. But like I said before, the Wii was kind of gimmicky, and Nintendo knew they couldn't do the same gimmick twice. So when the new console was in ideation, leadership noticed something. Nintendo had been losing the console war to PlayStation for years, but they had been winning the handheld war. No one even came close to Nintendo's dominance.
So his argument's that it's a handheld.
An idea. People love Nintendo handheld so much, why not package one in with the console? Someone at Nintendo had a great idea with the Wii U, but had bad execution. Instead of making a console with handheld capabilities, they needed to make a handheld with console capabilities. Sound like something? The Switch is first and foremost a handheld. It is a hybrid device for on the go that can also be plugged into a TV. And it's brilliant. Nintendo had been playing in two markets for 30 years, dividing the resources between the console and their handhelds. But with the Switch, they could focus on making great games for one platform, mobile hardware for any situation. So Nintendo exited the console war in 2017.
Nah, I mean, they changed their strategy. I wouldn't say they're just like, oh, we're not in the console war anymore. But they won. Nintendo won, period. No one's coming close to Nintendo anytime soon. I don't agree with his whole premise. And he's framing, right? It's called framing when you frame something like this way. He's like, here's why we can't talk about Nintendo. Because they won. Nintendo won, period. So, but let's hear what he has to say.
And I don't see them ever making a return, which leaves us with two, the duopoly.
Yep.
For years, the PlayStation and Xbox have fought for the right to say, we're the best. Best games, most storage, top-of-the-line graphics, with adamant fans fighting with them. But when the Xbox One fell behind, the leaders of Microsoft Gaming Division realized something. This loss was going to hurt. Unlike any other console generation, this gen introduced digital games that could be played on any future console.
And here's the thing. I think Xbox is going to exit the console race. They'll still make a console, but they've said for years that that's not their metric of success. It's Game Pass subscribers. It's people playing their games regardless of platform. And sure, Sony can keep doing the console thing, but we know that their profit margins aren't where they need to be. They're going to do the console race until they put themselves out of business. If they don't figure things out, figure out how to have a shorter window between console release and PC release. Like, yeah, it's very problematic. Yeah, they left it already.
We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation, where everybody built their digital library of games.
So Xbox lost the most important console battle, with digital games being a driving force. And Microsoft realized they couldn't win the console war against PlayStation.
We're not in the business of out-consoling Sony or out-consoling Nintendo. there isn't really a great solution or win for us.
So they decided on a different strategy, something that would take years to implement, but it would finally put Xbox on top.
The Xbox Series S, it's a lighter power console because you can still cloud stream to it. You can install a few games on it, but their strategy is services. They've been literally saying this to us publicly and loudly for years. And then everybody gets really surprised when their older titles go to other platforms. Like, it's just their strategy is not exclusives. That was made very clear when they purchased Activision Blizzard, right? Like, Diablo is going to remain multi-plat. All these games are going to remain multi-plat. But revenue-wise, it's all about the whole picture, the ecosystem.
There's just one problem. To be the best, Xbox would have to kill the console. Now, this is speculation. I want to make sure that is crystal clear. But if we look at the actions of Microsoft and the model they are pursuing, it makes sense to kill the console.
I don't think they completely get rid of the console. I never think Xbox will stop making consoles because it's still 30 million people that you can market to. And they're more likely to purchase products if they're in the ecosystem, right? So I don't think they get rid of that revenue target, personally.
Why? Because it's a razor and blades model. If you're not sure what that means, this is how the model works.
Yep.
A razor you buy at the store is sold at a loss. But razor companies do this because they recoup their money and make tons more by selling blades for a high margin. That's why companies like Gillette sue anyone that makes blades that fit their razors. Consoles are the same way. Consoles are normally sold at a loss, oftentimes a loss of hundreds of dollars per unit.
We're subsidizing that purchase somewhere between $100 and $200 with the expectation that we will recoup that investment over time.
But most console companies make back their money with publishing fees and first-party games. So whoever is winning the console war is selling more games, which minimizes those console costs and makes the console company way more money because of all the blades or games they're selling. But if you are losing the console war and people aren't buying your hardware and games,
their option is to go out of business or figure out a different strategy. They figured it out early on in the Xbox One era. As soon as Game Pass launched, I was at the meeting when Phil Spencer talked about backwards compatibility, how they want to have an ecosystem, how they want to move to this new strategy, and it's been very successful for them. They're not winning the console race because they don't see a future in the console race. There is a huge future, and Sony's staffing up for mobile. Make no mistake. That's right. And this is why Sony is going into PC games. Sony's profit margin is too thin.
costs can kill you, which is why so many companies have dropped out of the industry or died competing. It can cost billions of dollars to develop a console, and you have to develop a new one every 5 to 8 years, restarting the process and going back into the red. So as the consistent loser in the console war, Microsoft had every incentive to kill the console. And the first step in accomplishing their goal was to buy Minecraft.
They're buying Minecraft for $2.5 billion.
I love Conan.
At the time, many thought this acquisition was an odd choice. If Microsoft was trying to save the Xbox One, why buy Minecraft and then not make it an exclusive?
Have you looked at the profit numbers for Minecraft? Billions. It's billions of dollars. That's why they have no interest in making Call of Duty exclusive. Why? They've made that 2.5 billion back and then some. Easy.
Keeping it available on every platform, including your rival PlayStation. But as we know now, this wasn't Microsoft's.
They've probably made 2.5 billion just from what Sony has had to pay them. To give you some idea. The COD deal, they'll make that back in 5 years. The Activision deal, are you serious? They're going to make that back.
Plan. Following the Minecraft purchase, more acquisitions were made. Studios like ZeniMax Bethesda for $8 billion and Activision Blizzard for $69 billion.
They tested the water with Mojang. They were like, did this work out? Oh, wow. It worked really good. Can we buy Bethesda? Yeah, let's buy Bethesda. Let's try and buy everybody. Right? And they've bought a few. And by the way, Sony is also trying to buy other companies also. Unfortunately for them, Bungie is not succeeding in the way that they had hoped. Hell, I wanted to see Bungie succeed. It is a shame to see that they had a 45% revenue miss. That's insane. Anyway,
with more promises that most games wouldn't be Xbox exclusives. Xbox fans saw all these studio purchases in the beginning and thought, this is it. All these great games will revive the Xbox console. But according to Phil Spencer,
he's speculating.
That's not true.
I see it out there. I see commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true.
So Microsoft spent over $80 billion on game studios, and it's not to regain console share, but for building the Netflix of gaming. This was the first step in Microsoft's plan to become the new market leader and kill the console, to create the best gaming subscription service, and so far, I'd argue they are the best.
Yep. It's that simple. He gets it. Everybody gets it. That's the crazy thing. What's Sony's lineup in 2024? What do they have from their first party? Nothing. Right? Let me look. I have a list up here, over here. Last of Us. I'm sorry. They have the Last of Us 2 remake. Last of Us Part 2 remake. And then first party. I don't see anything on my list. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. They have nothing this year. Third party, they bought a bunch of exclusives for the year. First party, nothing. Microsoft finally got their stuff together.
Game Pass is cheap and it's versatile. It's got great games and exclusives. It's got some issues, don't get me wrong, but Game Pass can be played on almost any device. Not to mention it's readily available on every Windows PC, which by the way has 1.4 billion units worldwide. And this mass market reach highlights the second step of Microsoft's plan. Make gaming, or more specifically, Game Pass accessible everywhere. In the most recent Microsoft leak, this photo was released, showing the future of Xbox hardware. And according to this Xbox infographic, the future is every device. TVs, phones, laptops, streaming sticks, cloud devices. Console's on there, but it's...
Yeah, console is on there. That's why I think they're not getting out of the console race, right? They're not going to completely abandon the console race. They will stay.
It's not the focus. Per the leaks, the next mid-gen Xbox console to release will be all digital. And the next generation console is said to be a hybrid, combining the power of the client and the cloud. So the future of gaming is going to be everywhere and on everything. But why is Microsoft still making consoles if this is the future? Well, because technology isn't good enough yet.
Yeah.
We still need consoles. We saw what happened with Google Stadia. Gaming isn't ready to go to the cloud.
It's not. And that's exactly, like, everybody's like, they're going to get out of the console business. They're absolutely not. There's always going to be a console, but they're also going to make their games available on your phone via cloud streaming. They'll make it available on whatever console you play on. You can play all the modern Xbox games on an Xbox One, the big old black brick, right? You can play it on your phone, like I said, on the old Xbox console. So their user base keeps expanding. And once technology catches up with the streaming capability, they're going to be so far ahead of everybody else.
Cloud completely, nor are gamers. It takes time to move the market. This is why Microsoft is doing a hybrid console in 2028. We still need adequate hardware to run higher fidelity games.
Yeah.
Especially online games. But it is getting better. I've been streaming tons of old Xbox 360 games and indie games on my iPhone 13. And with the launch of the iPhone 15 Pro, you can now play modern games like Resident Evil Village. But what's even more amazing is that you can use your phone to play Resident Evil with ray tracing on your TV with a PlayStation controller. You literally can have a console in your pocket.
I played a ton. You can play with keyboard and mouse on iPhone. They're showing Division Resurgence right now. I have a video on IGN where I'm playing with keyboard and mouse. It's gonna happen, y'all. There's a new phone every year. They're going to address the overheating issues. They're going to address the issues with these AAA games that are on a phone. It's incredible.
$700 console, but this is where the industry is going. Why buy a console when your phone can do the job? Or even
exactly. Yes, it's a $700 console, but it's not just a console. All your music's on there. All your games are on there. You can use it as your phone, your emails on there. It is a one-stop shop for everything, for better or for worse, in our lives, in a little thing that fits in your pocket. Mobile is going to explode in the gaming sector. There's been tons of studies about this.
Even better, if your TV can. Microsoft recently partnered with Samsung. You can now stream games directly onto your TV.
Yep.
Stating in 2022, if you're new to gaming, this is an easy way to get into.
And somebody in chat, I'm recording this live, somebody said, I'm pro console. Great. They don't care where you play. They've said that for years, right? They still value you just as much as they value the player that they're playing on the phone, that's playing on the phone. Every customer is equal. They don't care where you play.
The fun without needing to buy a PC or console. So Microsoft bought up all sorts of video game IP, and they are making their games accessible on everything. But one last obstacle has been standing in Microsoft's way: the console war with PlayStation. Microsoft needed to get people to stop fighting over consoles and start fighting over subscription services. And a golden opportunity presented itself in 2017 with the release of Fortnite. You see, in 2018, you could play Fortnite with your friends across any platform: PC to PlayStation, PC to mobile, Xbox to mobile, except one. You couldn't play Xbox to PlayStation. Crossplay between consoles wasn't possible. But if anyone remembers, crossplay between consoles was available for a hot minute in 2017.
That's not true. Crossplay between consoles is possible. Epic refused to pay PlayStation the fees that they were demanding for crossplay. And there's a huge, I made a video about this. PlayStation's the reason that you couldn't have crossplay for games like Destiny for years, for Fortnite. There's a huge lawsuit about this. So let's not say it wasn't possible. He's probably going to get to it. Do you... I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think that's a very complicated, layered question, personally. I don't know. But Fortnite exposed what was really going on.
When Fortnite released, Epic Games accidentally turned on crossplay between consoles. Epic claimed it was a bug and crossplay was fixed, but players weren't dumb. We saw what was possible, and the cat was out of the bag. Cross-platform play between consoles was totally on the table. It was literally just a click of a mouse away.
Crossplay between PlayStation 4 and Xbox One is very easy to execute.
But Sony didn't like that. As a console leader, you don't want cross-platform play with your competitors. Online exclusivity was a core tenet of the hardware at the time, and it helped PlayStation dominate Xbox. If you can only play games with your friends on the PlayStation Network, then your friends are going to buy a PlayStation, not an Xbox. But if you eliminate that exclusivity, you remove a reason to buy a PlayStation or even a console. So Phil Spencer and Xbox saw this crossplay drama as their way forward, with Phil Spencer stating in a tweet he would have liked to see Epic Games leave it on, referring of course to cross-platform play with PlayStation. So players, companies, and Phil Spencer were all asking PlayStation to turn on crossplay, putting Sony in a pickle. But it got even worse when Fortnite was released for the Switch. At the release, Nintendo and Microsoft
and mobile.
From Minecraft to Fortnite, most multiplayer games were being launched as cross-platform. Nintendo, of all companies, was partnering with Microsoft, and people were outraged with PlayStation for not joining forces.
And do you see why a game like Sea of Thieves going multiplat isn't an issue? It's good for the Xbox brand. It's going to help them. It's going to help that franchise thrive.
The tension was high, and Sony was backed into a corner. Finally, 2 years after Fortnite was launched, Sony relented. They'd agreed to open their internet blockade. Gamers could now play with each other on any platform and on any device. It was glorious.
This game, you're not ready.
But by removing player exclusivity on consoles, crossplay destroyed the reason for a console war. Why fight over which console is better when we can all play together? Yeah, specs were still important, but most people understood Xbox and PlayStation are basically the same technologically. And if you really care about specs, you were part of the PC master race.
Silly console peasants!
The only thing that still matters is exclusives, but with the introduction of all these cross-platform subscriptions, we won't get console exclusives in the near future. Now, fans, of course, have still fought over which console is better, keeping the battle flag flying for years after the Fortnite charade. But Microsoft put a stop to that and officially ended the war in June 2023, stating in their lawsuit against the FTC, Xbox has lost the console wars. Microsoft surrendered.
Yep.
They waved the white flag, and it surprised everyone. No one has ever admitted to losing the console war. Not in television, not Sega, not Nintendo, not even the KFC oven console.
They said we lost. They said it straight up. They're like, we lost. So it's not like they're going to stop making Xbox ecosystem exclusives, but they don't care as much about console sales. So if you can't afford a PC and you want to buy a console still, they still value you as much as they value any other customer, and they're going to support that console. But the console sales, best case scenario, you're looking at 150 million units every console generation, right? I think that's about where it's going to cap out. And that growth is razor thin. Go look at lifetime console sales. It's razor thin. Now, what happens if you expand it to mobile? What if all your games can be played on mobile via the cloud for now until phone technology catches up? And what happens when you can play on PC, when you can play on televisions that can stream games like the Samsung television can? There's way more places that you can play Xbox games than there are PlayStation games. The PlayStation 5, 150 million units. By the time the PlayStation 5 is done, right?
They just moved on or died. But Microsoft admitted they lost because they don't care anymore. The home console isn't the future and they know it. Which is also why Sony was so strongly against the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Sony CEO knew that Microsoft would not exclude Call of Duty and most other games from PlayStation. He knew this acquisition would do little to affect PlayStation games in the near future. So Sony tried to block this acquisition because they fear what's coming next. A future of cloud gaming without consoles. Which is what the Activision Blizzard lawsuit was really about. Change is the bane of all industry leaders. Just like Kodak, who had 95% of the photography market, but then went bankrupt because they didn't shift to digital. Or Blockbuster, who could have bought Netflix for $50 million, but didn't because they were focused on brick and mortar.
And PlayStation is not trying to figure out their services well enough. They're trying to ramp up a mobile division, but they're making like a huge pivot to games as a service. They're trying the wrong strategies. And if they're not careful, we are in a paradigm shift right now where Xbox is starting to take back the lead. 2024 is going to be an insane year for Xbox games. And right now it's very quiet on the PlayStation front. What does the future hold?
It's hard to innovate when you're at the top. So if you're Sony, you want the console to survive and thrive. You don't want to compete against Microsoft on new terrain. Sony loses out on all these revenue streams when the console dies, and they'll have to fight to stay dominant, competing no longer in the console wars, but in the cloud wars. This is good for gamers. Competition brings variety.
Cloud, remember, is like, it's like 1%. I'd be more worried about the mobile market. In the near future, it'll be more mobile, and in the long future, it's going to be cloud. That's how I think it's going to go. Cloud's still a ways out though. Too many people have slow internet.
New competitors like Nvidia will be able to compete, and new hardware will be introduced. Sadly for Sony, consoles are not the future of gaming, and they know it. They just want to extend the console's lifecycle as long as possible, unlike Microsoft. Year after year, Microsoft has been slowly knocking down the pillars that hold up the console. Hardware accessibility, player exclusivity, lower entry cost. Consoles are no longer the go-to gaming hardware. You don't need a $400 console to play games with your friends like you did in the past. Because of the market shift, gaming is expanding across the globe at insane rates, and the majority of countries don't have consoles or need them. China is becoming one of the biggest gaming markets in the world, and consoles were banned there till 2016. Banned externally by the US because of their military use, and they were banned internally by the Chinese government not wanting their youth to play video games.
If you think about this, like Nintendo innovated. They made a mobile console, basically, that you can take on the go, that you can walk around your house with. The Switch exploded with popularity. It's big enough that you can enjoy your games on it, take it on the go, and it's not too cumbersome, right? Look at the Steam Deck. Huge market there. So if PlayStation comes out with their next console and it's just another console, I would be really worried about them. Because here's Xbox. They're like, okay, we got Game Pass, we got cloud streaming the televisions. We're getting a foothold in mobile. There's talks that are going to have a mobile expansion to rival Google and Apple. If they're doing all that and PlayStation is just like, okay, well, we have the PlayStation 4, which is going to become retro very soon, by the way. And we have the PlayStation 5, which is going to cap at 150 million units sold. You have a razor thin market that you can grow within. Well, Xbox is expanding to all these other avenues. I think this console generation, and I've said it, my silly graph thing, I'm not talking about console sales. I think they're going to even out in terms of overall revenue generation. Because PlayStation is playing the old game that Nintendo's gotten out of, and that's what this video is trying to say. Nintendo got out of the game and they're the most successful, right? And Xbox changed up the game so drastically that they're starting to get a huge wind behind their back. I can't remember. Windfall? I don't know the saying. Point is, Xbox has changed, PlayStation hasn't, and their industry is not growing particularly quickly. Because when you can play everything on your phone, why are you going to buy a $500-$600 console?
So the console market in China only makes up 0.1% of all gaming. PCs have also been the dominant gaming hardware in Korea since the 90s because of PC bongs. And think about India. They have the largest population in the world, and the gaming market is growing rapidly there. But what platform do you think they're going to play games on? Consoles aren't nearly as accessible in India as they have been in the West, but they have phones, TVs, and computers readily available.
Mm-hmm.
What platforms do you think game developers will want to develop for? Consoles? No way. It doesn't make sense. You can reach a much bigger audience on other platforms at a much lower cost. Do I think consoles will completely die out and go away? No, I don't. But I think they will be a fraction of what they are today.
This guy really gets
a smaller group of people in the world that want top-tier family room computing. Basically just buying a computer for their family room. But having a dedicated gaming device for your TV just isn't needed anymore. Or at least it won't be soon. So will Sony and Microsoft keep making consoles? I assume they will for the next 5, 10, 15 years. After that, it's foggy. 2028 is looking to be the bridge between eras. Hybrid consoles to bring us to the future. Little by little, consoles and the console market are decreasing, replaced by hybrid technology, cloud gaming, and subscription services. The console almost died 40 years ago, and its resurrection in the 80s brought us some amazing memories.
Yeah.
Unless something changes,
that's a great
I
clip.
believe the console as we know it is becoming a thing of the past.
It's just old tech. Consoles are like, it's just an old way of thinking. Like, I'm 42. Things change. That's not you couldn't afford a computer when the Nintendo Entertainment System came out, right? And the types of games that were available were just made for that product. Today, it's too easy to play games on your PC. It's just an old way of thinking, right? I do think cloud will catch on, or some new technology that hasn't been revealed yet will catch on.
Hybrid consoles, cloud hardware, phones, and TVs. This is the future of gaming. Signs all point to the death of the home console. It's sad to say, but it's also exciting. Now, a lot of this is speculation. Gaming is changing constantly.
Yeah.
And it's hard to predict the future, especially 10 plus years out. But whether I'm wrong or right, I'm fascinated by the future of gaming. And I'm thrilled to see what will come next. Thanks everyone for joining. This week, I want to highlight our Discord community. We are now doing monthly challenges and weekly events, all centered around building a successful indie studio.
This is really cool. So this YouTuber goes by the name of, and I'll go check out his video. Go give it a ton of love, tons of thumbs up. It's Going Indie, 76K, on road to 100K. What an amazingly well-produced video. Really, really liked it. I don't agree with that the original Xbox was like not cool or something. I don't think that's what he was trying to say. But besides that, makes a lot of good points about the different strategies and how the industry is evolving. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you're watching live, I'm not going anywhere, but I'm recording the outro right now. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell if you like this video. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. If you want to become a member, did you know that you can click the join button right below the video you're watching right now and become a member to support this channel? I really, really do appreciate it. Just click join. It is right down there. Thank you so much. I'm going to get out of here, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.